Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have some malicious compliance stories, and our first story of the day is by HungryAd2461. Boss agrees with secretary that I am not the office manager, so I stopped managing the office. When I was doing my articles at a small law firm, internship to be admitted as an attorney, I was the go-to person for everything at the office. Setting up computers, buying stationery, paying bills, going to court, seeing clients, etc. After being admitted as an attorney, I continued doing all this because the secretary only did about 20% of what a secretary would usually do and refused to do anything else. My boss does some shady business, don't pay taxes, etc., so he couldn't just fire her for fear of her ratting him out. He also never disciplined her. We are not in the US. Since we worked for my boss's mother's house, the secretary also spent about 50% of her day just chatting to his mother, and they became fast friends. Guess who was always the evil one that everyone ganged up on? Yours truly. I was made out to be incompetent at my job, and I used to cry a lot and almost became an alcoholic from work stress. One day, the secretary got really upset with me after I asked her to buy stationery since we don't even have staples, and after a heated argument, told me that I'm not the office manager and should stop lording it about as if I was. Bear in mind, I was her senior both as an attorney and in number of years worked at the firm. My boss did nothing and rather got upset with me, and so did his mother. I decided there and then I am done doing both secretary work and my attorney work because I was working roughly 50 to 60 hours per week. Standard is 40. Trying to get everything done without receiving overpay. The unemployment rate in my country is around 30%, and in the legal field, supply of lawyers exceeds demand. She knew this and my boss knew this, but no one cared that I was basically working myself into an early grave. Cue malicious compliance. If everyone agrees that I am not the office manager, then I will stop managing the flow of the office and only do my attorney work. I stopped paying the bills, buying the stationery, reminding my boss of important meetings, etc. Within 2 weeks, the electricity was cut off for 10 days because it wasn't paid, and my boss's elderly mother and the rest of his family had no electricity. We could also not work for those 10 days. Once the electricity went on, the phone lines were cut because of non-payment. We could again not work. The post piled up. There were no stationery. We couldn't do service of court documents because our service providers cut us off. It went on for weeks. I simply worked around the issues and sorted my life out. One example, when the Wi-Fi was off, I used my cell phone to hotspot my laptop without telling anyone. In the end, my boss and his mother begged me to do what I used to do, but I refused. Since I was focusing more on my actual work, my fees increased and my pay increased as well. Shortly thereafter, I moved away from that office to our secondary office and worked alongside lovely colleagues who all did what they got paid to do. I have been at this new office, same firm just a different location, for the last 2 years. So if this was you and you were able to move to the second location in the same firm but just a different location, but everything did seem to be working a lot more smooth, would that give you ease of mind, or would you always have kind of a back of the head thought and worry that because it's the same firm, everything might come back all over again? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Murasama23. Student swears they took an exam when I know they didn't? No problem. Enjoy waking up early next semester. I teach math at a university, including a couple undergraduate courses. I love math, so getting paid to talk about it with people is a dream come true, and I've been doing it a long time. This particular story is from a few years ago. Teaching undergraduate math, I get a wide variety of students. The freshmen struggle with all the freedom of college life, but their math knowledge is relatively fresh from high school. And on the other end, I get several seniors who have put math off until their last year and have forgotten a lot. Amelia was just such a senior. She put off math as long as possible, but in order to graduate on time, she needed to take algebra in the fall and stats in the spring. I was teaching the algebra course she enrolled in, which was a prerequisite for the stats course. That means if she doesn't pass algebra, she can't move on to stats. She would have to retake algebra in the spring and then take and pass stats in the summer. Her graduation would be postponed at least 3 months. Despite how important it was to pass my course, she blew off most of it. She only attended class 20% of the time. She skipped homework assignments. And worst of all, she blew off an entire exam. Cut to the final exam, and she needs an A to even pass. I don't know if she tried to study at all, but it was bad. She really bombs the final and ends up with an F in the course. Suddenly, her grade matters to her. She emails me asking for extra credit, a curve or something to bring her grade up over 14% so she can pass. I politely tell her no and wish her luck retaking the class next semester. She responds to that email asking why she got a 0% on one of the exams. She claims she took it, and to save me time, she even determined what the grade would have been based on her answers. And it is the exact score she needs to end up with a barely passing grade. How convenient. Now, I've had students try to trick me a lot over the years, but this one is new. I've never had a student claim they took a test that I knew they didn't. I was there, and I know she was not. Cue the malicious compliance. She claims she took the exam? Well, I have all the exams in my office on campus. If she turned one in, it would be there. But I'm home for the semester, and I'm not driving to campus to check for something I know doesn't exist. I email her back and say, I will not be on campus until the spring semester. But if you want to wait a month, I'd be happy to look for your exam when I return. I would just have to put a hold on your grade until then. She happily agrees. I don't know if she thought I was just bluffing to test her, but she says that's great. So when I submit grades for the whole class, I set her grade to pending. Now here is where this gets malicious. She can't sign up for math classes until she has a grade for mine. She can't move on to the next one, and she can't retake this one. By putting a hold on her grade, she can't sign up for any math classes for a month. By then, she will have to hope something is open that fits her schedule. There are several sections of this course, but they all fill up fast. About a week later, she emails me and says she would like me to just submit the F so she can sign up to repeat the course. I respond with, I'm sorry, but I'd have to be on campus to submit the paperwork. And as I said, I won't be back for a month, but I'd be happy to submit the F for you as soon as I return. Spring comes and I check for the exam. To no one's surprise, I couldn't find it, and so I submit the F. She is officially able to enroll in math classes again. I checked a couple weeks later, and she did manage to get enrolled in the course, but the only section left was at 8 a.m. My only thought is you don't know exactly what could have been going on in their life, so maybe there is some kind of realistic reason for her to do so poorly in the class. That said, there still really is no excuses, and although she did say yes to waiting and checking for the exam, knowing how badly it could have screwed them over, I think it's a little over the top to do that to them. It might have made her have to wait to graduate even longer than 3 months, because by then, there might not have been a class available for them. If you know that you will not find the exam, just fail the person and let them be able to move on and try and correct their own mistakes. They probably weren't fully aware that if they said yes to trying to look for the exam that didn't exist, that they'd have to wait to enroll in any other math class. I think it just crosses a line, and as a professor, you need to be more professional than that. Our next story is by SIC. Don't work harder, work smarter. This happened around 15 years ago while employed as a senior tech in an FE college in the UK. We were constantly told by the manager, don't work harder, work smarter. It was something that really grinded on all of us, the day-on-day buzzword. In the summer holidays, every year we were tasked to rotate IT equipment from room to room, so the new PCs went to the places that had higher device requirement. Every day, the manager says, don't work harder, work smarter, as we left the office. The last week of the summer break, he was on leave, so had left us a list of jobs to complete, signed off with the, don't work harder, work smarter. The team had quite a bit to do before the start of term. We read down the list. Things like move equipment from the 3rd floor to a different part of the campus kind of thing. It was grunt work, but then I had a flash of inspiration, shouted down the office to the others to stop and come over. We had a quick discussion and it was decided we would all follow the manager's instructions and not work harder, work smarter. We all headed off to the various locations where we were to swap the equipment with our tool belts. We unscrewed the door numbers and swapped them over instead of moving the equipment. Sorted. We headed off back to the office for a semi-relaxing week before the boss returned, happy in the knowledge that we didn't work harder, work smarter. I mean, to be fair, if you have to relocate an entire room just based off of the number of the room, moving the door plate's probably way easier and more convenient anyways. It is working smarter. It was a pretty good idea. Makes me think of an instructor I had at a community college I went to who would constantly say, "We have to be jam up, jelly tight," and some other stuff like "it's all in the ragu" or something like that. Just the same phrases all the time, you get so annoyed of them. Come on guys, we gotta be jam up, jelly tight on this and that, and oh man. Our next story is by a chromatic heaven, religious compliance. Background, I am non-denominational pagan, but my beliefs align closely to Buddhism. About 10 years ago, I worked for a company who sold high-end clothes. I was in the e-commerce department and shared a desk with a daytime employee. I worked overnight. Since I had to share a desk, we sort of split who got to put stuff where. One wall was all work information, one was personal pictures and stuff for deskmate, the last was mine. The desk area around the monitor was similarly broken up. In my area, I always kept a small statue of Buddha. It's probably not even 2 inches tall. Deskmate, being the good God-fearing Christian woman she was, took objection to my small statue, complained to HR, whom promptly told me it was company policy that no religious iconography could be on the desks. Buddha had to go home. Okay. Cue malicious compliance. For several weeks afterwards, maybe 2 months, I spent the entirety of my breaks and lunch walking the floor of the call center. Anything that could possibly be interpreted as religious iconography, from calendars with Bible quotes to handmade plastic mesh crosses to Bibles, other religious books, I reported every single thing. This was in the middle of the night. The whole of 3rd shift consisted of less than 10 people, including the supervisor. I had free reign to the whole of the call center, and all I had to do was tell HR I found something religious as offensive. It didn't take exceptionally long for them to go back to ignoring that I put a Buddha on my desk. Deskmate eventually left the department, and the desk was mine alone for the remainder of my employment at that company. What bothers me the most here is not necessarily the outright erasure of certain religions, it's the fact that when OP called HR out on being hypocrites on allowing all this other religious stuff around the office, they just kind of quietly stopped dealing with it. They didn't actually give much merit to anything that OP reported. They basically just said, it's too much effort, just have your little Buddha thing. That's just disappointing. And our final story of the day is by Downvotes Will Come, malicious compliance for someone who is generally compliant. I am a pretty compliant person by nature. Generally, I think acting out of spite brings adverse actions. However, even I have a story that might fit here. Many years ago, I was working a factory job in a print company while an undergrad. It was your typical 3-shift, 24-hour operation that was open Monday through Friday for operations. Weekends it was open, but mostly for maintenance to work on machines. I worked in shipping, 2nd shift, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. My job was to take the printed goods that had been stacked on pallets by the machine operators and print labels for the shipping weights, destinations, etc. Wrap the pallets in plastic wrap and forklift them into the warehouse until ready to load on a truck. About a month after being hired into the job, the 1st shift guy was moved to another part of the plant. There wasn't a 3rd shift. That just left me prepping every pallet for shipment all by my lonesome. It was fine though. The plant manager met with me to tell me I could work any shift I wanted. All the overtime I wanted, 1.5 times pay, until someone else was hired in to help. So I did. I was racking up the hours. Great money at 19 years old. This went on for the entirety of my time there. The first shift supervisor was kind of a jerk, but generally left me alone because I worked a ton. He would often come on Friday afternoons and tell me a particular truck would be there early Monday morning, and if the shipment wasn't ready to come in on Saturday, to get it done. Again, I was generally compliant. After all, Saturdays were a good opportunity to get caught up since the machines were down for maintenance, and in an 8 to 10 hour Saturday shift, I could have the shipping staging area completely cleaned from the week. Fast forward a few months, still they hadn't hired anyone else to help out on another shift. As usual, the shift supervisor came on a Friday afternoon to tell me about a truck that needed to go out early Monday morning. Only this time I had plans, my dad's birthday and a family dinner. I politely told him I wouldn't be able to work the next day for said reason. His answer, "You're scheduled to work then. If you don't come in, I'll write you up." Keep in mind, I had never turned down overtime before, never told them I couldn't come in on a Saturday. I pointed all that out to shift supervisor. His response, "If you don't like it, McDonald's is right down the street." I calmly told him, "You're right, they might be hiring people like you," and I went back to my area. That's not the malicious compliance though. He came up a few minutes later and told me he didn't care how long I worked on Saturday, but that I needed to come in. So I did. I showed up, clocked in. I did do a little work so they couldn't watch the camera and tell me I was abusing my time on the clock, including part of the shipment needed. Then I left exactly 1 full hour later. The truck was there waiting on me when I got there at 7 a.m. on Monday to start the shift. It waited while I finished that shipment. I knocked it out quick so as to not put the truck driver in a bind, and off he went. He wasn't upset about waiting a few minutes. The shift supervisor never said anything else about it, but he was there as I finished it Monday morning and was obviously frustrated. I started looking for another job that week. I found one after a bit. The plant manager wanted an exit interview, and I told him exactly what had prompted me to look for another job: the shift supervisor. He apologized for him. I'm certain nothing was ever done about it though. The plant manager position had seen a lot of turnover, and that shift supervisor had been there forever, keeping the business afloat basically. They weren't going to do anything about him running off a low-level college kid like me, even if I did have a ton of work ethic and energy. This is another great example of the saying, people don't quit jobs, they quit their bosses. All that overtime pay is great, and I'm sure that they appreciated OP being so flexible and everything, but you have to be able to see that someone working every single day and extra hours almost every single day, or however often OP worked, will probably end up having one day in the future that they can't work. It's all really on the shift supervisor. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you haven't, subscribe and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you do, whether it's just viewing the video, liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, I appreciate the heck out of it. Every little thing that you do helps the channel grow that much more, and I can't thank you enough for it. So until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll be right here next time on the Storytime channel.